Karma. When did someone try to destroy you, but accidentally destroyed themselves? Story 1. Back in college, I had a roommate named Travis who was jealous of just about everyone. I was doing well academically and had landed a competitive internship. One night, I came back to find a notice from the university stating I was under investigation for cheating on an exam. Completely blindsided. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. Turns out someone anonymously submitted evidence that I had stolen test answers. I fought it naturally. It took weeks, and during the process, I couldn't attend classes or go to work. My GPA and income took a hit. Eventually, IT pulled up login histories from the university portal and found out the test answers had been downloaded using Travis's account to my IP address. He had logged into his account on my laptop, used incognito mode, and thought that would be enough to cover his tracks. He was trying to frame me for stealing his answers, hoping I'd get kicked out and he'd get a better shot at internships. He didn't realize the university tracked device fingerprints, too. He was expelled for academic fraud and digital tampering. I was cleared and even given the option to retake the exam. But here's the best part. Years later, I got a job offer from a company where he had once applied. The recruiter recognized his name and said, "That guy? He had a weird incident in college we couldn't ignore." Karma's patient, but damn, she keeps receipts. Story 2. I worked at a startup where my manager, Jeff, didn't like that I was well-liked by our clients and had good rapport with the team. He was insecure, always trying to undermine people he saw as a threat. One day I found out he was telling the founders that I was lazy, missing deadlines, and bad-mouthing leadership. I was shocked. So I started documenting everything. Emails, Slack messages, timestamps, client feedback, the whole works. A month later, during a meeting with the exec team, Jeff smugly tried to throw me under the bus by claiming I had mishandled a client project. That was my cue. I opened my laptop and calmly pulled up the entire project timeline, including where Jeff had actually overridden my decisions that led to client dissatisfaction. I also had a voice memo, legal in my state, from a one-to-one where he told me to lie to the client about product capabilities. The execs didn't say much during the meeting, but the next day, Jeff's access was revoked and his desk cleared. The founder later told me they'd been waiting for a reason to let him go, but needed concrete proof. I didn't get Jeff fired. He did. I just handed him the mirror. Story 3. My ex-best friend Kara tried to destroy my engagement. She told my fiancé that I was cheating on him with a coworker and confessed this to him out of guilt. The coworker she accused me of cheating with was gay and married. But she didn't know that, because she never bothered to actually know anything about my life beyond gossiping. My fiancé confronted me in tears. When I explained the situation and had my coworker and his husband confirm everything, we realized Kara had completely fabricated the story. I was furious but not surprised. She always had a thing for my fiancé and tried to come off as the better option. Here's where karma kicks in. A week later, she tried to flirt with him over text, thinking he'd be vulnerable. He sent me screenshots. I posted the texts, with names blurred, on a relationship subreddit asking for advice. The post went viral. Someone from Kara's work saw the post, recognized her writing style and name from a previous rant she'd made, and connected the dots. Her HR department launched an investigation because she'd used company devices to harass multiple people, including me. She ended up getting fired for violating digital conduct policies. Meanwhile, my fiancé and I got married 6 months later, and one of our wedding toasts was literally titled, "To Those Who Try to Sabotage Love and Fail." Story 4. I worked at a car dealership where salespeople were sharks, and one guy, Tony, hated that I was outselling him. He tried everything, spreading rumors I gave customers illegal discounts, changing appointments in the system so I'd miss client calls, and once even tried to sabotage a test drive by loosening a tire lug nut on a car I was selling. Luckily, the mechanics caught it before it left the lot. After that, I'd had enough. I reported him quietly to HR, but nothing happened. So I let him destroy himself. He had a habit of using his work computer to check out shady websites, and I knew IT tracked everything. I also knew he kept photos and texts of customers on his personal phone, which was a huge data privacy violation. I collected evidence slowly and anonymously submitted it to the corporate compliance team. They ran a full audit. Tony was fired not just for violating multiple company policies, but for endangering a customer. He tried to take me down, but ended up banned from the entire Auto Group's network of dealerships. I didn't even have to say a word to anyone face to face. Sometimes, the best revenge is just watching someone sprint toward their own downfall with a smile. Story 5. At my old apartment complex, I had a neighbor named Angela who hated me for reasons I never understood. I kept to myself, paid rent on time, but she constantly reported me to management for made-up reasons. Too loud, smelled weed, I don't even smoke, or had guests over all night. Also false. She was clearly trying to get me evicted. I later learned she told the landlord I threatened her dog and left trash on her porch. Eventually, the landlord gave me a warning letter and said they'd be keeping an eye on me. I was devastated and paranoid, so I installed a Ring camera without saying anything. 2 weeks later, I caught Angela throwing trash bags on my doorstep, then pouring something that looked like bleach under my door. She didn't know the camera existed. I gave the footage to the landlord and also called Animal Services because she had left her dog out in 90-plus degree heat for hours at a time. The fallout? She got an eviction notice and a citation from Animal Services. She tried to play the victim, but the landlord said, "You spent months accusing someone else, and now we see this." I renewed my lease with a discount the next month. Karma wore a Ring cam that year. Story 6. Years ago, I was working as a junior architect in a firm where most of the senior staff looked down on younger talent. One senior architect, Colin, was particularly bitter. I had just presented a concept that the client loved, and suddenly Colin decided to make me his target. He started nitpicking every detail of my work, leaving nasty comments on internal reviews, and even tried to claim my design as his own during a project pitch. The client noticed the discrepancy when Colin gave a completely different explanation of the project's intention. I corrected him gently, and he went beet red. But instead of owning up, he tried to push me out of the team. He told HR I was unprofessional, disruptive, and plagiarizing from Pinterest. He even forged an email chain to back it up. Here's where it backfired. The head of HR happened to be a mentor of mine from my internship days and knew my work ethic well. She investigated the email metadata. Colin had sent proof from an account he controlled, and the timestamps didn't match the company's email servers. He was immediately suspended. When IT reviewed his computer, they found he had downloaded several competitor blueprints, violating NDAs in the process. They fired him, revoked his license with the state board, and later I found out he lost a pending contract. As for me, I was promoted to project lead 3 weeks later. Story 7. When I was a senior in high school, I got nominated for a competitive scholarship. One of my classmates, Jared, was also in the running and apparently didn't like the competition. He started spreading rumors that I was only getting attention because of my race and probably cheated on the SATs. I ignored it at first, until I found out he emailed the scholarship committee from a fake address pretending to be my tutor, claiming I had paid for test answers. He thought he was clever. He even used a burner Gmail. But the committee forwarded the email to my school's counselor, who immediately brought me in. I was devastated until I realized I could prove I'd never had a tutor, and the IP address from the email matched the school's network. The tech coordinator traced it straight to Jared's Chromebook login. Not only did he lose eligibility for that scholarship, but all his pending applications were notified of the academic dishonesty report. Even the ones he'd already been accepted to rescinded his offers. I ended up winning the scholarship. Years later, I heard he went to community college and still tells people he was robbed. But karma doesn't rob people. It just holds up a mirror. Story 8. I was a small business owner running a vintage furniture store. A local competitor named Denise hated me. She ran a similar store just 2 blocks away, but we had totally different styles. Mine was mid-century modern, hers more antique country. Still, she saw me as stealing her customers. She created dozens of fake Yelp and Google accounts to leave 1-star reviews. She also started an Instagram smear campaign, claiming I stole items from estate sales and resold them illegally. At first, it really affected my foot traffic. I almost shut down. But one of my loyal customers worked in digital forensics. She offered to help investigate. Within a week, she tied 37 fake profiles back to Denise's store Wi-Fi and her personal IP address. I didn't take legal action. Instead, I made a detailed, calm Instagram post showing the evidence. I never named her, but it was obvious. The next day, her shop's Yelp was locked due to suspicious activity, and her landlord terminated her lease for conduct damaging to nearby businesses. I didn't lift a finger to ruin her. I just opened the curtain and let karma do the talking. Story 9. In my first year as a high school teacher, I had a colleague, Mr. Blake, who resented new blood. He believed younger teachers were ruining the profession with progressive nonsense and tech-forward classrooms. One day, I was called into the principal's office because Blake had reported me for inappropriate relationships with students. I nearly fainted. He cited vague rumors and a few out-of-context screenshots taken from my public classroom blog where students commented on homework help. Luckily, the admin took it seriously and confidentially. While I was under review, the IT staff did a deep audit. Turns out Blake had been the one screenshotting, cropping, and editing the comment threads to make them look suspicious. And worse, he left the originals in a shared drive. When confronted, he tried to lie, then claim it was a joke. No one laughed. He was suspended pending an investigation and eventually fired. I got a formal apology from the district, a pay bump, and, ironically, an award later that year for excellence in student integrity and mentorship. Karma's wild, but nothing beats when it comes with a certificate. Story 10. A few years ago, I was renting a room in a house owned by a guy named Frank. He lived upstairs and was peculiar. At first, things were chill, but then he started claiming I owed him extra fees, cleaning charges, utility overages, made up stuff that wasn't in the lease. When I pushed back, he threatened eviction. I calmly reminded him I had a signed agreement and paid through the end of the term, so he decided to go nuclear. He filed a false police report saying I was dealing drugs from the property. The cops raided my room, took my computer, searched everything. I was mortified. But I had nothing to hide, and I had an old Nest Cam in my room to monitor my cat when I traveled. It recorded everything, including audio of Frank telling someone on the phone that he'd fix this tenant problem permanently. My lawyer submitted the footage. Frank not only got slapped with filing a false report, but it turned out he'd done the same to a tenant 2 years prior and it had flown under the radar. This time it didn't. He lost the house in a legal settlement. I moved out and got a check for $7,000 in damages. Karma walked in wearing a badge and holding receipts. Story 11. I used to work at a nonprofit, and our team was pretty tight-knit, except for one guy, Leon. He always seemed to resent the fact that I had a good relationship with our director. I was in charge of donor relations, and I'd recently brought in a major corporate sponsorship. Leon, who wanted to take over my role, decided to sabotage me. He waited until I went on a short vacation, then accidentally deleted files from our donor CRM system. He claimed they were corrupted and couldn't be recovered. Problem was, they included the entire communication chain with the new sponsor, which put the deal in jeopardy. I came back to chaos with people asking what happened, but luckily, I had a habit of keeping offline encrypted backups of all high-stakes projects, just in case. I restored everything, time-stamped and intact. Our IT guy got curious and dug deeper. He found that Leon had logged in under my credentials, which he'd seen on a sticky note I accidentally left in a drawer during a presentation. That made it look like I'd deleted the data myself. The director brought it all to light in a staff meeting, along with the footage of Leon entering my office without permission. He was fired on the spot. As for me, that corporate donor doubled their contribution after seeing how I handled the crisis. I still send Leon a mental thank you every time I deposit my bonus. Story 12. In university, I had a lab partner named Claire. At first, she was super friendly, until we started getting graded. She didn't contribute much, so I started pulling more weight to protect my GPA. Claire didn't like being outshined. Halfway through the semester, she told our professor I'd plagiarized our latest report from an online database. I was shocked. The professor took it seriously and sent it to the academic board. I didn't panic, though. I still had the original documents we collaborated on, plus our chat history where she admitted in writing that she hadn't done anything and I had saved the day again. The board reviewed it all. Not only was I cleared, but Claire was accused of academic misconduct for false reporting and using the exact same intro paragraph from a paper published 2 years prior. She failed the course. I got an A and a departmental recommendation. Sometimes karma doesn't need to hit hard. It just shows up with your own receipts. Story 13. I used to bartend at a fancy downtown lounge where most of the tips made the job worthwhile. We had a strict rule about tip pooling, and it worked, until a guy named Ethan was hired. Ethan was charming to management, but nasty behind the scenes. He'd skim cash tips before they went into the pool and constantly badmouthed me to the owner. Eventually, he claimed I was stealing and gave evidence from security footage, except he'd carefully clipped the part where he handed me the cash to log. I was put on probation. But one of our regulars, a lawyer, overheard me venting about it and offered to take a look. He suggested asking for unedited footage. Boom. There it was. Ethan not only setting me up, but pocketing tips when he thought no one was watching. He even had a stash hidden under a loose tile behind the bar. He was fired that night. The owner apologized and offered me Ethan's full-time slot and a raise. I accepted and replaced the tile he used with one labeled Liar's Corner as a joke. Story 14. At my last job, we had a team leader named Meredith who hated anyone she didn't control. When I got transferred to her team, she instantly disliked me. I asked questions. I had ideas. That was enough. She started undercutting me in meetings, reassigning my projects, and forgetting to CC me on important emails. When that didn't work, she escalated. She accused me of threatening her in a private Slack message. HR launched an investigation. She even showed them a screenshot. Problem? I was in a completely different Slack workspace at the time, my side freelance job. I showed IT the logs from both platforms, including my device activity and timestamps. The smoking gun was the font in the screenshot. Slack doesn't use that font. She had photoshopped it, sloppily. She was placed on leave, then quietly let go for falsifying internal records. 6 months later, I took her job, literally. She tried to bury me, and instead gave me a tunnel straight to the top. Story 15. A few years ago, I was on a competitive gaming team. We were ranked regionally and had a shot at qualifying for a sponsored tournament. One teammate, Greg, was salty because he wasn't selected as team captain. I was. He decided to get revenge by leaking fake messages that made it look like I was using slurs in private chats, screenshots, videos, the works. He sent them to the sponsor and to Discord mod admins. I was banned from the team server pending investigation. Fortunately, I had enabled message logs and two-factor authentication backups. The timestamps in his screenshots didn't match actual chat history, and the so-called video evidence was spliced together using old Twitch clips and deepfake text overlays. Bad ones. The mods reinstated me and permabanned Greg. But the karma part? The sponsor sued him for defamation and false representation. His real name got posted when the court documents went public. He lost his personal Twitch channel, too. I qualified for the tournament. He rage-posted about cancel culture, while Karma just queued up another match. Story 16. My cousin Daniel and I were both named in our grandfather's will. I was supposed to inherit his old bookstore, which I'd worked at for years, while Daniel was to receive a cash portion. He hated that, even though he never cared about the store or our grandfather. A month before the will was to be executed, Daniel forged documents and claimed our grandfather had changed his mind, signing the bookstore over to him instead. He submitted the paperwork to the probate court, thinking no one would question it. But Daniel didn't know that Grandpa had made a video recording of his final wishes with his attorney present, just to avoid this kind of thing. Once the video was played in court, and compared to Daniel's fake papers, it was game over. Not only was his claim denied, but the judge referred the matter to the district attorney for attempted fraud. Daniel ended up with nothing, not even the cash portion, and he had to pay legal fees for both sides. The bookstore is mine now. I installed a coffee bar, and we sell a blend named after Daniel called Bitter Roast. Story 17. When I was 19, I worked as a cashier at a pharmacy. My supervisor, Tanya, had it out for me. I never figured out why, maybe because I was younger, friendlier, and customers often complimented me. She started small, scheduling me at odd hours, denying my time off requests, whispering that I was lazy behind my back. Then one day I got called into HR. She'd accused me of stealing from the register. $80 gone from one shift. I panicked, but I also knew I was careful with money. I asked to review the security footage. Management obliged, and guess what? Not only did I not take any cash, the camera showed Tanya opening the drawer shortly after my shift ended. She stuffed a few bills into her bag and walked out. HR was stunned. They reviewed other days and uncovered a pattern. She'd been blaming various cashiers over the last year while skimming money herself. Tanya was fired and arrested. I got a raise and an apology, and eventually a job as assistant manager. She tried to wreck me over $80. It cost her everything. Story 18. Back when I was freelancing in web design, I did a project for a guy named Mark who ran a sketchy crypto startup. I built him a landing page, clean and professional, and even helped him create a pitch deck. He paid me half up front, then ghosted. When I followed up, he blocked me everywhere and posted online that I had scammed him, saying my work was stolen and plagiarized. I was furious but stayed calm. A few weeks later, I stumbled across a Reddit thread about crypto scams to avoid. Someone posted a screenshot of Mark's landing page, and I jumped in. I calmly explained how I had built the site, showed time-stamped drafts on Figma, and included emails and contracts. The thread blew up. Turns out several other freelancers had worked with Mark and been ghosted. A few of them joined the conversation. One person even contacted a journalist covering shady startups. Mark's site was delisted from Google, his wallet flagged for fraud, and his online reputation was permanently tanked. I never got my second payment, but I got something better, watching him erase every trace of his company in real time. Story 19. I once dated someone named Lauren who was charming on the surface, but manipulative underneath. When I broke things off, she didn't take it well. I moved out quietly, thinking that would be the end of it. 2 weeks later, I got called into my job's HR office. They'd received an anonymous tip that I was harassing someone in the office. Lauren claimed I was stalking her and had sent inappropriate messages to several women. Only problem? Lauren had never worked there. She created fake email addresses using my co-workers' names and sent messages to HR from them. What she didn't know was that our security team was top-notch. The email headers showed the same IP for all the messages, and it matched one previously used by Lauren when she'd visited me at work to bring lunch. HR cleared me, but they filed a police report for harassment and impersonation. I didn't press charges, but the court gave her a restraining order. I went from being terrified to relieved in a matter of weeks. She tried to burn my career to the ground and instead lit a legal fire under herself. Story 20. I used to live in a duplex and shared a wall with my neighbor, Rick. He was one of those I own this block types, always complaining about everyone, calling in noise complaints for dogs barking or kids laughing. One night, I had friends over for board games. No alcohol, no music, just pizza and laughs. The next morning, I found a noise citation taped to my door. Rick had told the city I hosted a party with over 20 people. I knew it was bogus, so I requested the body cam footage from the responding officer through a public records request. The footage showed the cop arriving, peeking inside through my window, and laughing because there were 5 of us playing Settlers of Catan. But the best part? The officer said on camera that Rick had called in 8 times that month, each time exaggerating claims. The city reviewed his file and discovered he had filed dozens of false reports over the years. He was fined for abuse of city resources and eventually evicted after the landlord had enough. The silence from his side of the wall afterward was the sweetest sound I've ever heard. Story 21. I used to work at a boutique marketing firm, mostly doing social media for luxury clients. We had a new hire, Amanda, who was ambitious, but not in a good way. Within a month, she began taking credit for my strategies, whispering to our creative director that I was losing touch and plagiarizing templates. It came to a head when she found one of my presentation decks on a free template website and claimed I had ripped it off. She timed it right before a client renewal meeting. Our director was furious and told me to prepare for disciplinary action, but Amanda got cocky. She had submitted the template site as evidence, but it turned out the site had a timestamp and upload name. The uploader? Me. I had designed that deck years ago and had contributed it to a free resource library as a favor for a colleague. I pulled up the original files, project history, even the Photoshop working layers. It was bulletproof. Amanda was let go for lying to management and attempting to sabotage a coworker. Ironically, the client ended up referencing the deck specifically in their renewal and said, "This feels like exactly what we need." Amanda tried to erase me, but she ended up giving me the perfect testimonial. Story 22. I worked as a junior loan officer at a bank, and we were encouraged to bring in new clients to earn bonuses. One of the senior guys, Keith, had plateaued in his performance and saw me as a threat. He was smug, manipulative, and had a habit of rewriting history. I closed a huge deal with a local construction company, and the next day, Keith told our branch manager that he had helped me close it and that the account was originally his. He even forwarded an email chain proving it. The manager was skeptical. Thankfully, I had learned early on to always BCC my personal, compliant documentation address for situations just like this. The email thread he submitted? Fabricated. A couple of the lines he quoted didn't even match the bank's formatting. When our compliance officer did a deep dive, they found he'd tampered with timestamps and even attached an altered PDF file pretending to be the original agreement. He was quietly forced to resign, and corporate investigated all his past deals. I didn't just get to keep my bonus. I got offered a promotion 2 months later. Funny how his sabotage attempt turned into my launch pad. Story 23. At university, I lived in a shared house with 4 others. One of them, Nate, was the definition of passive-aggressive. When the rest of us voted to stop letting his girlfriend stay over 24/7, he went ballistic. A week later, the landlord messaged me, saying he'd gotten an anonymous tip that I was keeping a pet in the house, something strictly forbidden. He even got a blurry photo of a cat in the window, only I didn't have a pet. But I did recognize the curtain in the photo. It was Nate's room. He didn't realize I had been documenting his cat sneaking out from under the porch for months, since it used to scare away the local birds and knock over trash bins. I hadn't reported it until now. I sent the photo, time-stamped texts between Nate and his girlfriend about the cat, and even a clip from our shared doorbell cam of her carrying in a litter box. The landlord issued Nate a formal warning and increased his rent due to lease violations. His girlfriend was banned from the property entirely. He tried to set me up and ended up stuck paying more to live alone. Story 24. A few years ago, I started a side hustle baking custom cakes. A former co-worker named Sheila, who also did baking part-time, got very competitive after I started gaining traction online. She pretended to be a customer, placed a large birthday order, then ghosted me the night before pickup. No payment, no response, just silence. I'd spent 3 days working on that cake. I posted about the experience, no names, just frustration, and got a lot of support. But then someone messaged me a screenshot of Sheila's private Facebook post bragging that she'd taught someone a lesson about stealing clients. The cake photo she posted had my unique logo marker in the corner. I reported her to the Facebook Marketplace moderators, and several people she'd sold to came forward saying she reused or resold others' work. Her pages were taken down. She lost multiple clients and had to issue refunds. Meanwhile, a food blogger saw my post and asked to feature my work. That one botched cake turned into triple the business. Karma can be sweet, literally. Story 25. I was working on a government IT contract, and we had to bid competitively for extensions. A rival contractor, Blake, who used to be on our team before leaving under strange circumstances, submitted a lower bid and started aggressively lobbying for our removal. Then one day, my supervisor was told our access was being suspended due to a security concern. Someone had submitted evidence that our team had violated data storage policies. Blake had forged internal documents, complete with our department's digital headers, and leaked them to the compliance board. Problem was, our logs proved those files never existed. More importantly, he used outdated formatting we'd phased out 6 months ago, which any forensic tech could instantly spot. Not only was his bid revoked, but he was permanently blacklisted from future government work. His company dissolved 6 months later after clients pulled out. We not only got our contract renewed, we got a 3-year extension. Blake played dirty, karma played smarter. Story 26. During my first year as a high school coach, one of the parents, Mr. Landry, decided I was a threat to his son's athletic future. His son was good, but not the team captain. And Landry didn't like that one bit. He began a whisper campaign that I was playing favorites, drinking at games, and being inappropriate with students. It got serious enough that the school board got involved. I was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. What Landry didn't know was that the Booster Club president, a well-respected parent and volunteer, had been recording their meetings for note-taking. On one of those recordings, Landry flat out said, "If we can't get rid of him the right way, we'll make something up." That clip saved me. Once the board heard it, everything flipped. Landry was banned from campus events, and his son lost his captain hopes due to parental interference. I returned to coaching, and that same year we won regionals. He tried to ruin me for a title his kid never earned, and instead lost any respect people had left for him. Story 27. I ran a small indie game dev team that was just starting to get traction. We had a former team member, Josh, who left on bad terms after a disagreement over crunch time. A month later, our entire source code got leaked online. Josh started spreading rumors online that I had been stealing assets and using code snippets from copyrighted projects. A few YouTubers picked up the story, and it started to gain traction. What he didn't realize was that we had implemented a custom watermarking system in our source files, randomized hashes in unused variables and dummy functions that traced back to individual contributors. The leaked files had his signature hash all over them. We published a public response, showed the watermarked proof, and even demonstrated our own asset creation process in a live stream. The backlash against Josh was swift. He lost freelance contracts and was banned from several dev forums. The scandal? It doubled our game's visibility. We went from niche project to breakout hit. He tried to destroy our rep. All he did was boost it, with his name tagged to the betrayal. Story 28. I used to work as a makeup artist on film sets. One time, I got hired on a mid-budget indie production where another artist, Bianca, had been expecting the lead role on the crew but was passed over in favor of me. She made it obvious she resented me. She started spreading rumors to the director that I was flirting with the male cast, that I was using expired products, and that several people had complained about me. One morning, I showed up to set and was told I was being dismissed to avoid disruption. It crushed me until the lead actress, who I'd become friendly with, contacted me privately asking what happened. I explained everything. She got curious and dug into Bianca's claims. Not only had she fabricated the complaints, she'd also been secretly using my tools without consent, and one actor had developed a rash because of her poor sanitation. Word got out fast. Bianca was fired 2 days later and blacklisted by that production team. I was rehired and asked to consult on 2 other projects through the same circle. Her smear campaign gave me more jobs than it cost me. Karma came back camera ready. Story 29. My neighbor in a shared apartment complex, Ron, was a bitter man in his 50s who hated that I worked from home. He'd bang on the wall during Zoom calls, file constant noise complaints, and tell others I didn't have a real job. One day I got a call from the property manager. Ron had submitted photos and a video claiming I was running an illegal business from the apartment, something against our lease terms. He said people were coming in and out constantly. I work in tech. The only guests I have are Amazon drivers and maybe a pizza once a week. Thankfully, I'd installed a doorbell cam for package theft protection. I shared a week of footage. No guests, no activity. Then the manager noticed something else. Ron's video was recorded from my hallway window. He had installed a small hidden camera pointed at my door. That violated both privacy laws and the lease. Ron was evicted. I got an apology and a discount on rent for my trouble. He tried to prove I was doing something wrong and ended up exposed for surveillance paranoia. Story 30. I had a friend, former friend, named Lacey, who was secretly jealous of my engagement. She acted excited but constantly made snide remarks about how fast we moved and how she didn't trust guys who proposed too quickly. Behind the scenes, she started DMing my fiancé from a burner Instagram account, pretending to be an ex of mine and saying I was still hooking up with people on the side. He was suspicious but didn't tell me right away. Instead, he replied, asking for more details. Lacey got cocky and sent a fake screenshot of my texts, but forgot one important detail. She used an Android font while I have an iPhone, and she used an old profile photo of mine that I hadn't had in over a year. He confronted me, and I showed him my current messages, device history, and even dug up the old photo to show where it came from. Her Facebook account. We confronted her together. She tried to cry and say she was just testing him. We uninvited her from the wedding. She lost nearly every mutual friend after the truth came out. Her little sabotage test ended up being the best proof of how strong our relationship really was. Story 31. A few years ago, I worked in property management. One of the tenants, a lawyer named Randall, was always difficult. Rude emails, threats of legal action over the smallest maintenance delay, constantly escalating issues to corporate. One day, we issued a fine for unauthorized construction because he tore down a shared fence without permission. He responded by sending a 7-page email alleging I'd been discriminatory in my enforcement and claimed I was targeting him personally. He CC'd the regional VP, legal team, and half of corporate. Thankfully, I kept extensive records. Every tenant violation was documented, time-stamped, and photographed, including Randall's. I compiled a folder, sent it to corporate, and waited. They investigated and discovered Randall had forged documents in the past, submitted altered photos to dispute a noise complaint, and had harassed multiple employees. He'd even doctored a rent receipt once to avoid a late fee. Within a month, he was evicted, not for the fence, but for falsifying legal claims and harassment. I later found out he tried to sue, and the judge dismissed it with prejudice. He tried to bury me with paper. Karma shredded it first. Story 32. I once worked as a team lead at a digital agency and had to fire a junior developer, Nick, for repeated no-shows and missed deadlines. He wasn't happy and made a big scene. A few weeks later, we got hit with a flood of one-star reviews on our Glassdoor and Google pages. They all had the same weird phrasing, things like toxic overlord atmosphere and soul-crushing office furniture. Funny, considering we worked remotely. I traced some of the IPs. We had a sysadmin who moonlighted as a security consultant and confirmed multiple fake accounts came from the same location, Nick's hometown, during work hours. We decided not to respond. Instead, we posted a case study about how we handle transparency, showing off our real team, work-from-home setup, and culture. The reviews stopped, but Nick didn't. He filed a bogus complaint with the State Labor Board claiming he was wrongfully terminated. He didn't know we had all his missed time logs and Slack messages archived. The board ruled against him, but worse, the complaint triggered an audit of him because he had lied on his unemployment forms. He had to repay the state and lost his benefits. Karma showed up in a spreadsheet. Story 33. In college, I was part of a student-run theater troupe. I got the lead in a production, and another member, Melissa, was furious. She had expected the role and thought she was owed it for seniority. After the show opened, she started spreading rumors that I was sleeping with the director. I brushed it off until she went further. She emailed the Student Affairs office claiming I was plagiarizing a senior thesis project and using it to get extra credit through the performance. Total lie, but serious enough that I had to meet with the dean. Lucky for me, I'd documented the writing process from day one. I had dated drafts, advisor feedback, and even workshop timestamps from the school's online portal. The investigation ended fast, but then it turned toward Melissa. Turns out she had taken a monologue from an obscure blog, submitted it as her own for a scholarship, and the plagiarism software flagged it during her next submission. She lost her scholarship and was placed on academic probation. She tried to cast me as the fraud. Karma sent her script back with red ink. Story 34. I used to work in IT at a mid-sized law firm. My coworker, Phil, was charming to management but lazy and condescending to the rest of us. When I started getting more praise from leadership, he took it personally. One day, a massive client file vanished from our shared network. Panic spread. This case was going to court in a week. Phil immediately pointed fingers at me, claiming I had been the last one to access it. Luckily, we had a full audit trail. I pulled the server logs. The file wasn't deleted. It was renamed and hidden inside a folder with the same name as a Windows system file. Very clever, unless you forget that all actions are tracked. Phil had done it at 2:13 a.m., using remote desktop access he had installed months ago without permission, violating firm policy. I reported it to our compliance officer. They not only restored the file, but they launched a deeper investigation and discovered Phil had accessed several confidential documents he wasn't cleared for. He was terminated immediately and escorted out. He tried to frame me with a disappearing act. Karma hit restore all. Story 35. At my old job, I was asked to lead a new department. One of the managers who'd been passed over, Mara, was clearly bitter. She congratulated me in front of others, but constantly tried to undermine me behind the scenes. She started spreading stories that I was unqualified, that my team hated working with me, and that I was micromanaging to the point of dysfunction. Then she, accidentally, forwarded an internal chat to the executives showing my team complaining about me. Except, none of them actually said the things in the screenshots. My assistant, who is incredibly sharp, immediately noticed inconsistencies in the font and alignment. We compared it to actual Slack messages and confirmed it was a poorly edited image. I brought it to HR along with a request for a deeper look. They found that Mara had used ChatGPT to generate fake messages using my team members' names. She didn't even know Slack has exportable logs and timestamps. She was fired for falsifying documents. I was promoted again 3 months later. She tried to start a whisper campaign and ended up shouting her own guilt. Story 36. When I was a restaurant manager, we hired a new server named Jade. From day one, she acted like she was above everyone else, constantly criticizing other staff, flirting with married customers, and trying to gain favor with the owner. Then one week, 3 negative Yelp reviews came in, each saying I had yelled at customers, charged them incorrectly, and was aggressive. My boss called me in, confused, because that was completely unlike me. Something felt off. I reached out to the reviewers, and all 3 said they'd never actually left reviews. Turns out, Jade had created fake Yelp accounts using random photos and left those reviews herself. But here's where karma nailed her. She used the same throwaway Gmail to register each account, and that email had her full name in it. One of the hosts recognized it and showed me. I brought everything to the owner. She was fired the next morning and blacklisted from every location in our restaurant group. She tried to poison my reputation and ended up choking on her own lie. Story 37. Back when I worked at a car rental company, my coworker Dave was gunning for a promotion we both wanted. I had better performance metrics, so he tried to get creative. One day, a customer filed a complaint that I harassed her and gave her a damaged vehicle on purpose. Dave told our manager he'd seen me act sketchy with her and backed up the claim. Problem is, we had security footage of the lot and audio from my body cam that I wore during vehicle walkarounds. Turns out the customer was Dave's cousin, and she'd been recruited to file the fake report. She'd even driven the car a few miles around the block, hit a curb, and brought it back scratched. The video showed everything. The company launched an investigation, and when it all came out, Dave was fired for misconduct and fraud. His cousin was banned from renting again, and I got the promotion after all. He tried to frame me with a fake customer,